An old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle.
And Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and bowed himself. Have you heard that there are people who can talk to the dead? Have you heard about the experience of the afterlife of people who are dead? How can all this be explained? Continue watching, because we will reveal what you've never been told. Some Christians' interpretation of the prophet Samuel's death is that he could be called out and actually maintained communication with Samuel after dying. This action or practice is known as necromancy or necromancy, from the Latin word necro, meaning dead, and mancy, meaning consultation. This practice is an act of consulting the dead. However, in Deuteronomy 18:10-12, God gave an order. There shall not be found among you any on that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. The Bible is a harmony of expressions and does not contradict itself. A careful study of this passage in question will lead to a healthy understanding. The context tells us that by this time, God had already cast out Samuel for being king because of his disobedience. A spirit tormented him. He sought David to kill him, and he murdered the priests at Nob. Before disobeying the divine order concerning Amalek, Saul had previously fulfilled the command to eliminate all soothsayers and sorcerers from the country. Afterwards, the Philistines gathered to fight against the people of Israel, and Saul tried to seek God's guidance. But the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams nor by Urim, nor by prophets. In a state of despair and impatience, which characterizes his life, Saul, by not getting an answer from God, which was the established lawful means, restored elect means. Then said Saul unto his servants, Seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her, inquire of her. And his servants said to him, Behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit at Endor. And Saul disguised himself, and put on other raiment, and went, and 2 men with him. And they came to the woman by night, and he said, I pray thee, divine unto me the familiar spirit, and bring me him up, whom I shall name unto thee. Saul had disguised himself to get to the sorcerer, or fortune teller, to answer his request of summoning a dead man, because the woman had escaped the massacre of sorcerers that he himself had caused by divine command. And the woman said unto him, Behold, thou knowest what Saul hath done, how he hath cut off these that have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Wherefore then layest thou a snare for my life, to cause me to die? And Saul sware to her by the Lord, saying, As the Lord liveth, there shall no punishment happen to thee for this thing. Then said the woman, Whom shall I bring up unto thee? And he said, Bring me up Samuel. Up to this point, the woman still hasn't realized that she was with Saul. And the moment she begins her witchcraft practice, the demon reveals that she was speaking to King Saul. And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice. And the woman spake to Saul, saying, Why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul. And the king said unto her, Be not afraid, for what sawest thou? And the woman said unto Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth. And he said unto her, What form is he of? And she said, An old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel. And he stood with his face to the ground and bowed himself. Let's take into consideration the following aspect of these verses. Firstly, the woman, when expressing what she sees, states, I saw gods. She not only saw one god, but several. Secondly, if one accepts the theory of immortality of the soul, then Samuel, being a prophet of God, must come down from heaven. This is not the case though, because the sorcerer rather sees Samuel rise up from the ground. How interesting. Thirdly, when Saul asked her to detail what she sees, she reports, and he said, An old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle. This means the woman never even saw his face. Fourthly, Saul presumes and accepts that this figure is that of Saul, even though he doesn't even see him either. Fifthly, from this moment on, the story, which is a narrative text, adopts Saul's beliefs as real, simply to describe the events as they seemed. This is known as personification. That's why in verse 15 we read, And Samuel said to Saul, Why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? And Saul answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God is departed from me, and answereth me no more, neither by prophets, nor by dreams. Therefore I have called thee, that thou mayest make known unto me what I shall do. Sixthly, if Samuel was a servant of God, why would he submit to the call of an emissary of Satan? The prophets would never have responded to that call, influenced by elect request. The story continues. Then Saul said to Samuel, Wherefore then dost thou ask me, seeing the Lord is depart from thee, and is become thine enemy? And the Lord hath done to him as he spake by me. For the Lord hath rent the king of thine hand, and given it to thy neighbor, even to David, because thou obeyest not the voice of the Lord, nor executest his fierce wrath upon Amalek. Therefore hath the Lord done this thing unto thee this day. The devil posing as Samuel makes Saul think that God is his enemy, which he has tried to make mankind believe since they fell into sin. He makes God look like our enemy. Why doesn't want to forgive? Which is truly the opposite of God's loving character. The devil resorts to the prophecy that the prophet had said when he was still alive, on the occasion that Saul had disobeyed Amalek. The Lord hath rent the kingdom of Israel from this day, and hath given it to a neighbor of thine, that is better than thou. This does not prove that the figure is a real prophet, because Satan knew that Samuel had said to Saul on the previous occasion. He had encouraged him to disobey with the help of his demons. He knew, and still knows, the words and deeds of men and women. The enemy ends his discussion saying, Moreover, the Lord will also deliver Israel with thee into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow shalt thou and thy son be with me. The Lord also shall deliver the host of Israel into the hand of the Philistines. Many see a revelation of God to the dead prophet here, but in reality, and without much effort, the enemy knew exactly what had happened to Saul. This is because the devil knew that God had already turned away from Saul, who then finally committed an abomination by consulting to the sorcerers. It is simply because of this that the devil, posing as Samuel, was able to tell Saul of the consequences that were to come. On the other hand, the devil as Samuel told him, "And tomorrow shalt thou and thy son be with me." If this story was real, then Saul would have been saved and would then be next to Samuel. This contradiction reveals the deception. Scripture indicates that one of the causes of Samuel's death was because he consulted a fortune teller and did not consult the Lord. If he had communicated with Samuel, then he would have also communicated with God through the prophet. However, the Bible is clear in 1 Chronicles 10, 13, and 14 when it emphasizes, "So Saul died for his transgressions, which he committed against the Lord, even against the word of the Lord, which he kept not, and also for asking counsel of one that hath a familiar spirit, to inquire of it, and to inquired not of the Lord. Therefore he slew him, and turned the kingdom to David the son of Jesse." If it is impossible to communicate with the dead, and the Bible says that they do not know anything, then how can the afterlife of the people that died be explained? How can you explain those experiences of people that have died but were then revived by the efforts of medical professionals and medicine? What about those cases where someone died for several hours and then woke up in the morgue telling of what they had seen and heard in the afterlife? I was always curious to hear and read those experiences that not many people have the opportunity to tell. They almost always start in the tunnel with a light glowing at the end and a feeling of peace. Many claim to have been in hell when they momentarily died. They say that they've seen tormented souls and other related matters until their soul returned to their body. Many of these people have become Christians after experiencing this. What actually happens to these people? The truth is that these people never really died. They suffered a cataleptic state, which is a disorder of the nervous system. Catalepsy can be defined as a biological state in which the person lies motionless in an apparent state of death without vital signs. The person doesn't respond to stimuli. Their pulse and breathing becomes slow. Their skin becomes pale. The person can thus be clinically considered dead. In ancient times, because of a catalepsy, many people were buried alive. This has been verified by archaeological excavation of remains where the coffin or urn is scratched up from the inside. The glass, if there was any, is broken and the corpse is face down. Others have lost their lives due to catalepsy. When an autopsy was performed on them, because of this, since 1978, some countries have ruled that every human thought to be dead is subject to an electroencephalogram, where is it determined if the person is dead or not. One time, a journalist who worked for the Perfil or Profile magazine of Argentina, in his eagerness to obtain an award, dedicated himself to studying the phenomena of death. He decided to inquire a cataleptic and had woken up in Municipal Cementorium of Buenos Aires. So this man went to the manager and after identifying himself mentioned that he knew what happened sometimes during a cremation, namely, the corpse moves and screams sometimes due to the air accumulation in his lungs. He explained that he wanted to know if the manager had ever heard any words at any point in his activities. The manager expressed signs of not wanting to talk, and there was tension. "My curiosity is to know," the journalist said, "if someone had spoken words during their cremation, Did you know that there is a certain disease state in the body which is called catalepsy? Since this is a real thing, I imagine someone must have woken up here in the oven. But that's very presumptuous. You have a lot of imagination, replied the manager. The journalist insisted. I know it's happened before. And if you wish, sir, I promise and give you my word and honor. He took his hands, presenting $300 in his palms, that I will say that this happened in Bolivia and not here in La Chacarita. After this proposal, the foreman took the money and put it in his pocket, saying in a low voice, yes, sometimes I hear words. Imagine. Once we put the body in its place, adjust the locks, and turn on the fire, it is very difficult to go back. It takes about 15 minutes to stop the flames. Sometimes I hear, get me out of here. I'm burning. Help me. Sometimes they're still alive, the manager said. And if they have what you say, then it has happened. And you can't do anything about it? Asked the journalist from the Perifel magazine in dismay. And what can we do, sir? If it's very difficult to stop everything fast enough, we could never rescue anyone alive, said the manager of this crematorium. And what do you do then? The journalist asked again. We take our hats off and pray the Lord's Prayer. What I've just told you verifies that many people who have been considered dead are not actually dead, but are rather in a cataleptic state. They are precisely the ones who, when they come out of this situation, share their afterlife experiences. In this state, when the level of oxygen in the brain is lowered and the immense of the death is felt, the brain begins to relive memories and images pass through the mind, elements associated with the beliefs of the person who is suffering this nervous accident, and creates a dream about the afterlife. Usually these dreams have to do with people's beliefs. So we have, for example, people who have claimed to have been in heaven and seen angels. Others have been in hell, claiming it is the place of fire. And some devout people have said that they saw and had conversations with their favorite saint. The cataleptic Greeks have seen Zeus and other gods. These are all mythological things that we know are not real. But at the crucial moment in their life, people create and experience these type of scenes in their mind. This was what you've never been told.